Good afternoon, everyone. So when I was a young person and doing my catechism, this would have been in the 80s, I remember a very sort of strange video that we watched that tried to explain in sort of a very 70s parable the life of Jesus. And it was very sort of disco-ish, trippy, LSD kind of video where there were these three lights who represented the Trinity. Well, then one of the lights went down to earth and then all of a sudden became this man who was dressed in this sort of red silver outfit, but you couldn't see his face. And he started interacting with ants. At least this is how I remember it. Trying to talk to the ants. He was maybe like a little bit bigger than the ants. And then the ants didn't like what he had to say, and they turned against him and killed him. But then he came back again, and he was glowing. And then he ascended into heaven, and then all of a sudden, he was back, and there were three lights again. And this was supposed to show the life of Christ, his incarnation, his life, his crucifixion, and of course his ascension into heaven. And I realized, and I was sort of a young kid, maybe this is a sign I was supposed to be a priest, there's something wrong here. This video is not correct. Because if indeed weird psychedelic red man after he ascended to heaven should still be weird psychedelic red man in heaven. So there shouldn't be three lights, there should be two lights, the Father and the Spirit, and the Son keeps his body. He doesn't change. That was the error. This is what we celebrate today. The fact that we believe that Jesus, who is the Son of God who became man, took a body, was really human, and when he died and rose from the dead and ascended to heaven, his body went with him. He doesn't leave it on earth. He's not just purely spiritual. Christ has his body in heaven for all of eternity. And what that shows us, amongst a lot of things, is the importance of the body, of our humanity, of the givenness of our bodies. So we as Christians believe that the body matters. It's important. Biology matters. Creation is good. It's not to be discarded, but it's redeemed. And whether these people intended it or not, probably they were just doing drugs, but it shows in this video one of the most ancient heresies of the church. And it's the heresy called Gnosticism, Gnosticism, from the Greek word gnosis, which means knowledge. And it's a complex theory to understand what Gnosticism is, but basically it says that the spiritual is what's really good, but the body and creation is bad and should be shunned. Writing about Gnosticism recently, and in fact on the same topic I'm talking about today a little bit more in depth than he did, Father Rutler, a Catholic priest some of you may have seen on EWTN, said, the longest simmering heresy in Christian history is Gnosticism. It's been there from the very beginning, which opposes things spiritual to things material, with the consequence that one's authentic identity is trapped in the body. And to be authentic, we must escape our bodies. But the Christian knows that the body is a temple and not a prison. From the very, very beginning, the church has refuted the heresy of Gnosticism. To say the body is not bad, because if it's bad, then God would not have become man and kept his body for all of eternity. Now, fortunately, there's not as many quasi-heretical or psychedelic videos about the incarnation and ascension out there anymore. But the truth is, this heresy of Gnosticism is still around today. Where we see very subtly a denial of the importance of the body, a refusal of biology. And we as Christians need to be very observant and to see it where it pops its head up. And we can see it in a number of different places today. But the main way that we can spot it, and again, this is a very complex topic, is present in what we call, or what many of you may have heard about, is gender theory. the gender theory that is so popular today in our culture. A brief summary. We believe, gender theory will teach that sex is something biological, written into our bodies, genetic, corporeal. But the gender refers to something different. It's the attitude, feeling, and behavior that a culture associates with a person's biological sex. It's a social construct. And while some of that to a certain degree is true, gender roles can be social constructs, the problem comes when it comes to gender identity, or the way it's lived out. It refers to one's sense of oneself as male or female or something else. And so it depends on what you feel like, what you experience. The problem is the promotion of the idea that one's subjective experience of their gender, whatever it may be, is what is really important. And that's what should be followed rather than the givenness of their biological sex. It's a denial of the importance of the body and the objective reality of their body. Now, I'm not going to deny that there are people out there, some of you here today possibly, that does experience this gender confusion. Confused whether they're male or female, feel out of place with their body, and it can be a struggle. And I work with people like this. I understand. And we as Christians have got to show compassion to people who do experience this and reach out to them. But the fact is, one's subjective experience of gender does not negate a biological and genetic reality. So this gender ideology, so I'm not talking about individuals who struggle with this. I'm talking about the ideology. I'm talking about ideas here. This is what's important. Is a manifestation of sort of a pseudo-Gnosticism, where the objective reality of the body, of biology, of sexual difference does not matter. But instead, one's pseudo-spiritual experience does. At its core, this idea that the subjective experience trumps the reality of the body and the reality of biology contradicts the basic tenets of Christianity and Christian anthropology, and I would dare say reality itself. So this is where Christians and Catholics have to join the discussion. We're not talking about individuals, we're talking about the struggle of ideology, of philosophy, of thought here. And the question that has to be made or asked, why does the body matter? Why is the body important? This is the heart of what we're talking about here, because there is a real danger in this pseudo-Gnostic denial of the body and difference, and sexual difference, to have some pretty serious impact. And Pope Benedict, writing before he became Pope, talked a fair bit about this. And I have a rather long quote that I want to be able to read to you, and I don't want to bore you to death, but it's so crucial because he gets at the heart of the matter of what's going on here. It's a challenging idea. He says, today's anthropological program, anthropology is the study of the human person, of man, hinges more radically than ever before on emancipation, of wanting to be free. The kind of freedom it seeks is one whose goal is to be like God, to determine reality. But the idea that we can be like God implies a detachment of man from his biological conditionedness, from the male and female he created them. This sexual difference is something that man, as a biological being, can never get rid of, something that marks man in the deepest center of his being. Yet is regarded as totally irrelevant triviality, as a constraint arising from historically fabricated roles, and is therefore consigned to the purely biological realm, which has nothing to do with man as such. So the real root here is the desire for freedom, it's complete autonomy. I want to do what I want to do and when I want to do it. And it means that if my body, the givenness of biology, stops me from doing what I want to do, according to this ideology, then it can be or should be surpassed. But the problem happens, what happens when we as a culture begin to disregard biology, the givenness, the reality of our body? He continues, man thereby, in doing this, strikes a blow against his deepest being. He holds himself in contempt because the truth is that he is human only insofar as he is bodily, only insofar as that he is man or woman. When man reduces this fundamental determination of his being to a despicable trifle that can be treated as a thing, he himself becomes a trifle and a thing. There's the issue. And his liberation turns out to be his degradation to an object of production. Whenever biology is subtracted from humanity, humanity is itself negated. Thus, the question of the legitimacy of maleness as such and of femaleness as such has high stakes, nothing less than the reality of the creature. Our body matters. Our bodies don't belong to us as things. We are our bodies. And indeed, it's possible because of genetic deformity and different other types of conditions, there can be some confusion there. But the exception is not going to make the rule. There is a biological norm. And when we deny the order of creation, we face some serious problems where it becomes easier for us as a culture to manipulate and use the body as an object. We cannot deny the reality of biology. But there, in my opinion, though, is a very disturbing hypocrisy written into this. We live in a time, in a world, and fortunately in the church, where there is a greater awareness of our need to protect the environment. You see it all the time. Young people particularly understand this. Respecting ecosystems, reducing waste and pollution, rejecting genetically modified organisms, learning to live a more holistic, organic lifestyle, living in harmony with nature, preserving the balance present in the environment. And these are all really good and necessary things that Pope Francis has talked about at length. But the hypocrisy is so often that the culture that promotes this sort of balance in the environment seems to deny that human beings are part of the global ecosystem. Pope Benedict talks about this. The book of nature is one and indivisible. It takes in not only the environment, but also life, sexuality, marriage, the family, social relations. In a word, integral human development. Our duties towards the environment are linked to our duties towards the human person, considered in himself and in relation to others. It would be wrong to uphold one set of duties while trampling on the other. Herein lies a grave contradiction, I'll call it hypocrisy, in our mentality and practice today, one which demeans the person, disrupts the environment, and damages the society. Here's the irony, or here are the ironies, here are the hypocrisies. We promote respect and ardor to respect for the ardor present in creation. But for the ardor present in our own bodies, no regard for that. We can do what we want. We can manipulate and impose our will on that. We condemn polluting the environment with chemicals and chemical waste. But we pollute our bodies and we think it's okay with synthetic hormones. We work for this ecological balance and spend all this money, but we deny the human ecology. We deny that we're part of this and that we can't just simply think that these rules don't apply to us. That's hubris. That doesn't work. It causes lots of problems. Because we have a body, we are part of the environment. We are part of the ecosystem. And we must respect the biological determinateness of our humanity. Pope Francis is one of the strongest critics today of this ideology of gender. He says, we are creatures and not impotent, sort of echoing what Benedict says. Creation is prior to us and must be received as a gift. At the same time, we are called to protect our humanity. And this means, in the first place, accepting it and respecting it as it was created, not denying the body. But this all comes, I guess very appropriately together, today as we as a nation celebrate Mother's Day. In that same strain of thought, Benedict says again, since the biological determinateness of humanity is least possible to hide in motherhood, you can't escape the fact that you're a mom, you can't escape the fact you're pregnant, an emancipation that negates the biological, what he calls bios, is a particular aggression against the woman. It is the denial of her right to be a woman. Conversely, the preservation of creation is just so far bound up in a special way with the question of woman. Because without motherhood, creation doesn't continue. Creation doesn't move forward. And Gnosticism, you can see the roots here. If you study it, had a particular distaste for women. There's a strand of misogyny running through it. One of the Gnostic Gospels that many of you may have heard of is the Gospel of Thomas. Everything sounds good until this one little passage where Jesus says, in order for a woman to get into heaven, she has to become a man. And as a result, the church said, nope, I'm not going to accept that. It's the denial of femininity. It's the denial of the woman. And so the funny thing is that some of the most radical critiques of this are the complete left-wing feminists who reject this pseudo-Gnostic idea that the body and biology don't matter, because they see it as a slap in the face for the gains that women have made in the realm of gender equality, to claim that a man, just because he feels it, can be a woman and entitled to the same rights of a woman. Different. You call her something else, but it's not a woman. So in conclusion, I know this is a very complex and controversial topic. I'm actually surprised no one stormed out of here. It often happens. But the truth is, thank goodness, the church can't be silent. We have to be able to speak in a reasoned and logical way about this, and to be able to engage in dialogue, because old heresies die hard. We have got to be willing to address this new Gnosticism that is inherent in some of, or a lot of, the ideology of gender. In our discussions, though, we cannot forget that we're talking about ideas, and there are people who do struggle with this, who do struggle with their identity, and we must show them love and compassion. More important than any logical argument or biblical argument, the way we live virtuous lives, respecting our bodies, living as Christians in the world, looking towards the return of Jesus and his body, will speak the greatest with power and love than any words we can utter. Amen.